What drives a person to terrorize an entire city?
Was Richard Ramirez truly the Night Stalker that the world remembers, or was there something darker at play?
Questions linger to this day. Why did Ramirez choose his victims? What pushed him to commit such brutal acts? Was he just another monster,
Or something far more sinister?
In the mid-1980s, a wave of terror gripped Southern California. A killer with no apparent pattern stalked the night, leaving a trail of blood and fear. His name? Richard Ramirez.
Known as the Night Stalker, he became infamous for his brutal, senseless
attacks across Los Angeles and San Francisco. But what happened during those horrifying months that turned Richard Ramirez from an unknown drifter into one of America's most notorious serial killers?
Was Richard Ramirez just another random killer? Or did his story have a darker, more twisted origin?
What was the real reason behind his spree? And how was he able to evade authorities for so long?
Richard Ramirez's crime spree lasted from 1984 to 1985.
His attacks were horrifying in their randomness. Burglaries, brutal murders, and rapes all committed in the dead of night.
Ramirez had a peculiar signature. He left satanic symbols, often drawn in blood, which caused a media frenzy.
He would break into homes, often attacking entire families, before fleeing the scene without a trace. One of the most chilling elements of the case was his apparent lack of remorse. The brutality of his attacks left the authorities baffled. How could someone so mercilessly violent go undetected for so long? But what did they miss? What crucial clues were hidden within the scenes
of the crime?
There were key moments in the investigation that led authorities to believe Ramirez was the killer.
In the early stages, victims described a man with a unique set of features. A disfigured, frightening smile, dark, penetrating eyes, and an almost unnatural presence. But despite these vivid descriptions, it took months for the police to finally
connect the dots. The case was more than just a search for a killer.
It was a cultural phenomenon.
People locked their doors every night, and the fear of the Night Stalker spread across the nation. But what fascinated the public so much? Was it just the terror, or was there something more?
Was Ramirez a man driven
by evil, or was he simply a product of an unforgiving society?
Theories about Ramirez's motivations ran rampant. Some said he was driven by satanic rituals, while others believed he was a victim of abuse and neglect.
The truth, however, remained buried within his own twisted psyche.
Experts still debate what pushed him to commit such acts, with some even claiming that his fascination with Satanism was simply a way to gain power over his victims. But perhaps the most chilling element of this case was the final twist. Ramirez
wasn't just hiding in plain sight.
He was an active part of the community, often mingling with people without anyone ever suspecting who he truly was. Was Richard Ramirez truly just a product of a broken system, or was he something far worse?
What did he leave behind that no one has dared to discuss?
Could his reign of terror have been stopped earlier? Were there warning signs that everyone overlooked? Or was his fate sealed from the moment he stepped into the shadows that first night?
Richard Ramirez was caught, but the questions surrounding his mind and motives are still open. What made this man stalk the night? And what's the true horror behind his chilling acts? What lies beneath the surface of a man who terrorized a city for months? And what secrets did Richard Ramirez carry to his grave? In the wake of his capture, the world thought they knew everything about Richard Ramirez. But was the truth about him fully revealed?
His crimes seemed senseless. But was there a twisted logic behind the terror he spread?
In the months after his arrest, authorities scrambled to understand the motivations behind his horrifying spree. Could there have been a deeper, darker reason for Ramirez's killing spree that no one ever fully understood? What did his chilling court statements and behavior tell us about his true nature? Richard Ramirez was eventually apprehended on August 31, 1985, after a chance encounter with a group of citizens in Los Angeles.
When they recognized him from police sketches, they chased him down, bringing the killer to justice.
But despite his capture, the world was left with more questions than answers. What motivated Ramirez to kill so many innocent people? Was it a desire for power? Did his fascination with Satanism play a bigger role than authorities ever realized?
Ramirez's court appearances became notorious in their own right.
The self-proclaimed Satanist raised his hand in court, drawing a pentagram on his palm,
sending shockwaves through the media. Was he just trying to get attention, or was there something more sinister behind his actions?
Experts speculate about his true psychological condition. Was he a psychopath driven by thrill? Or was his history of abuse and trauma to blame?
As the investigation continued, more details of Ramirez's past emerged.
His broken childhood, filled with violence and exposure to his cousin's horrifying acts, may have laid the groundwork for his later actions. Was he simply a product of his environment?
Or was there something inherently evil within him that no one could predict?
The obsession with Richard Ramirez went far beyond his arrest.
People were fascinated by the public trial, by the chilling letters he sent from jail, and by the photographs of his eerie courtroom behavior. His legacy grew even darker after his death in 2013, with his case sparking endless debates on nature versus nurture and the influence of media. But what made him so terrifying?
What made the Night Stalker such a deeply unsettling figure? Was it his randomness or the way he reveled in fear?
From the satanic symbols to his terrifying confession, Ramirez turned his crime spree into a spectacle. Yet, even after his capture, he maintained a certain sense of control over his narrative. But the real question remains, how was he able to keep the world in suspense even after his capture? Was he aware of his own terrifying influence on the
public, or did he simply thrive on the chaos he created? But what did Richard Ramirez truly leave behind, and why is his story still haunting us today? What secret did Ramirez take with him to his grave that still captivates the world's darkest minds? Was he simply a killer, or a monster shaped by the horrors of his past?
Richard Ramirez's reign of terror ended with his capture, but his legacy continues to haunt not just the victims, but the very culture he left behind.
How does a man like him leave a mark on the world that refuses to fade?
What is the true cost of Ramirez's killings, and why does his story still captivate the public decades later?
The arrest of Richard Ramirez was a victory for law enforcement, but the nightmare didn't end with his capture.
The impact of his crimes, both on his victims and the public, reverberated long after he was behind bars.
He was more than just a killer. He became a symbol of fear, obsession, and the dark side of the human psyche. But what is it about his case that still sends chills down our spines today? Was he simply a monster, or something else entirely?
Ramirez's story didn't end with his trial. Even after his conviction, his name continued to dominate headlines. His letters from prison, often disturbing, sometimes poetic, added a layer of mystery that kept the public intrigued.
He portrayed himself as a rebellious figure, someone who thrived on the chaos he caused, even from behind bars. His celebrity
status as the Night Stalker grew, feeding the public's morbid fascination. His influence extended beyond media coverage.
For years, books, documentaries, and even films have explored the depths of his crimes and the twisted psychology behind them. In his final years, he still sought attention, denying his guilt in interviews and maintaining his role as the unrepentant Night Stalker. But the true legacy of Ramirez's crime spree lies in the psychological toll it took, not just on the families
of his victims, but on a generation that grew up with the fear of a man who could slip in and out of the shadows unnoticed. He preyed on vulnerability and the fear of the unknown, which left a deep scar on the public consciousness. Why did the Night Stalker still resonate so deeply with people? Was it the randomness of his attacks, the apparent lack of motive, or his twisted self-image as a satanic figure? Ramirez became a symbol of how terrifying a human being could be when unbound by societal norms. A man who found power in unpredictability and violence. The media fascination only grew over time. His face became synonymous with horror, his name a byword for terror.
But what made this case so captivating wasn't just his crimes, it was the mystery surrounding them.
How could someone blend into society so easily, and yet commit such unimaginable
acts? But as society changed, so did the narrative around Richard Ramirez. Some began to question whether the media's sensationalism contributed to his fame.
Did we as a culture make him more powerful by giving him the attention he craved?
Even now, Richard Ramirez's name lives on in whispers, his legacy haunting not just the world of crime, but the very culture that kept him in the spotlight. What have we missed in his story? And what secrets did he take to the grave with him?
Was Richard Ramirez simply a cold-blooded killer? Or was there something far more complex and disturbing at the heart of his terror? How does the mind of a
serial killer like him truly work? What drives a person to commit such brutal, random acts?
Was Richard Ramirez a product of his environment? Or was his darkness always there, waiting to emerge? Richard Ramirez's chilling acts have left us with
more questions than answers, especially when it comes to understanding his psychological makeup. Was his violent spree a result of mental illness, childhood trauma, or something more sinister? His disturbing behavior, which continued even after his arrest, demands a closer look at the mind.
Behind the Night Stalker, how did Richard Ramirez's mind operate during his killing spree? And what clues about his psyche remain hidden in the chaos of his crimes?
Richard Ramirez didn't fit the typical profile of a serial killer.
His attacks
Seemed random, often violent and merciless, but always shocking in their unpredictability.
Was there a method to his madness, or was he simply driven by a compulsion, one that he himself didn't fully understand? His behavior raised questions that doctors and criminal psychologists have debated for years. Was Ramirez a psychopath,
Void of empathy, or was his cruelty born from a darker place, a childhood filled with abuse, violence, and exposure to criminal behavior?
Ramirez's early life was anything but typical. Growing up in a broken home, exposed to a father who was physically abusive, and later living with an older cousin who showed him disturbing images of murder and violence. Could these experiences have shaped the man who would later stalk the night? Psychiatrists who examined him after his arrest noted the complexity of his case. He claimed he was possessed, that his actions were driven by an inner demon.
Was this the voice of a man struggling
to comprehend his own darkness, or was he simply using his mental state to justify his horrific actions? What continues to captivate the public's fascination with Richard Ramirez is not just his crimes, but the chilling indifference he displayed throughout his trial and the media frenzy that surrounded it. His ability to distance himself from
the horror he caused, while still thriving in the attention, raised even more psychological questions.
Was this simply narcissism, or something more sinister, a deliberate manipulation of the public?
During his trial, Ramirez's behavior became increasingly erratic, and his obsession with Satanism added another layer to his complicated psychological profile.
But was it just an image he cultivated for attention, or did it truly play a role
in his motivations? Experts have long debated whether Ramirez was fully aware of the impact of his actions.
His chilling behavior, from his courtroom smirk to the way he engaged with his followers during his time in prison, suggested a mind that was capable of deep manipulation and control. But perhaps the most terrifying question remains: what could have pushed a seemingly ordinary man to commit such extraordinary acts of evil?
The more we dive into Richard Ramirez's psyche, the more we uncover, but there's still so much left to question. What part of him was simply a product of his environment? And what part was pure, unadulterated evil? What have we missed in understanding the true motivations of the Night Stalker? Is there more to his mind than we'll ever fully comprehend? Richard Ramirez was caught, convicted, and sentenced. But what if the real story is still out there?
What happened in the shadows that we'll never truly understand?
Did the Night Stalker leave behind clues that could change everything we thought we knew about him?
Could there still be secrets buried beneath his legacy of terror?
Richard Ramirez's
terror ended when he was caught in 1985. But the haunting mysteries surrounding his reign of fear remain unsolved to this day. From his chilling confessions to the baffling nature of his crimes, certain aspects of his story still don't add up. What was the truth behind the satanic symbols he left at crime scenes? Was he hiding more than we know? And what dark secrets could he have taken with him when he died in 2013? Despite being convicted of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 rapes, and 14 burglaries, Richard Ramirez's full story remains shrouded in mystery. His crime spree was random and brutal, but it was also deeply symbolic, with satanic messages and occult references left behind at multiple crime scenes. Could these symbols have been a message, or was he merely playing into the media's fascination
with the dark and macabre? What remains truly baffling is his apparent lack of remorse or real explanation. In interviews after his arrest, Ramirez was uncooperative and even defiant.
He claimed his actions were a result of his obsession with Satanism, but experts and investigators have long debated whether that was simply a facade.
Was he simply trying to manipulate the narrative around his crimes, or was there a deeper, more personal reason for his obsession with dark rituals?
There's also the issue of his many unexplained interactions with the media and his so-called fans. In the years following his capture, Ramirez received letters from admirers and even had romantic relationships while in prison.
But what was it about him that still attracted attention?
Was it just the notoriety, or was there something more chilling beneath the surface?
Why does Richard Ramirez's story continue to haunt the public mind?
There is something undeniably magnetic about
the mystery surrounding him. The media, True crime enthusiasts, and even casual viewers, remain captivated by the randomness of his attacks, the terror he spread, and the questions he left unanswered. The story of the Night Stalker is far from over, as new revelations and
theories continue to surface. His name has become synonymous with fear, not just because of his horrific crimes, but because of the unanswered questions that linger.
From conspiracy theories surrounding his true motivations to doubts about the full extent of his crimes, Ramirez's legacy remains tied to the eerie sense that we will never know everything about him. Even after his death, many people still speculate
about what the world missed. Were there other victims?
Did he act alone? Or was there a network of people involved in his reign of terror?
Some experts argue that Ramirez may have been just the tip of the iceberg, and that other killers may have been inspired by his chaotic spree. As more time passes,
the question becomes, what secrets did Richard Ramirez truly take with him when he died?
Was there more to his crimes that we'll never understand?
Is the full truth of the Night Stalker still hidden in the dark corners of history, or have we
already uncovered everything we can?